Good morning everyone, Tater here. Welcome to Tater Games. Today we're talking about controversy, one of the coolest topics that you can talk about because controversy itself is controversial. So a lot of people thought that I was in support of microtransactions when it comes to EA and thought that the microtransactions were actually a really good thing, which they are not a really good thing. I do not think that. I was in support of them being able to manipulate people in order to pay for these microtransactions. So we go straight to the comment section to see what they were actually saying. Some people were saying claiming microtransactions are the future because they are effective is the wrong approach and otherwise a waste of my time. This video could have explored what makes the difference between good and bad microtransactions. Someone else said that the industry would be unable to sustain itself if the companies continue down EA's shady microtransaction path. The customer/company trust dynamic is paramount for the success of the industry, and pay to win and pay to continue microtransactions does nothing more than damages that trust. So reading these comments, I don't think you guys actually got the sort of intention of that video, and that might be my fault, that might be your fault, doesn't really matter. The point is, the intention of the video was to say that EA makes good decisions. Essentially what they've done is taken away microtransactions temporarily so that they get that initial audience upon the initial release, and then once they've captured people into this whole gameplay, I mean, I'm sure the game is actually fun if you take away a lot of these components that are making it bad, which they have done. Then of course, once they've established an audience and a community and people are playing the game a lot, then they can of course sneak the microtransactions back in there. This is an amazing business decision, but it's not, of course, from a consumer standpoint, it's not the best thing. We do not want that. We don't want microtransactions kind of flashing in our face. But personally, I can really appreciate what they're doing. I think that's an amazing thing to be able to move stuff around. I don't think microtransactions are the best thing in the world. I'm completely against them, but unfortunately that's the way that the world is going. You need to be able to create a profit. Essentially, that's what you're trying to do when you're running a business. Now, I did say in that video that I think it was all intentional, and I don't think there was any mistake. I don't even think they were listening to the community, but some people kind of disagree with that. They didn't listen to the community, they listened to Disney. Disney called them up and tried to figure out why CNN and Wall Street Journal were talking about the Star Wars game having a pay-to-win gambling system in their game. So my theory was that I think everything that they've done up to this point was intentional. They planned to make it a specific way. They planned to take it away to get that trust from the audience, like, okay, we've listened to you, we've done this thing based on the community decision, when really I think that the decision was there all along and they were going to go around with this path and of course introduce microtransactions. They've got enough data to actually see how people react to these games. So the problem with this is I think everything is intentional, mainly because of the amount of money that actually went into making this game. It's a large amount, a very large amount. They are able to afford these things like marketing teams, which you and I probably don't have access to. I think it's safe to say that this very, very large company doesn't make that many mistakes in an initial release. I think it was all intentional, it was all planned out, and I don't think that a company of that size and that amount of money put into it, those marketing teams, that everything that are making this game popular, actually didn't consider that this would happen. When you work on a game for a week, this is not what you think about. You don't think about marketing, you don't think about the business side of things, you think purely about making the game and finishing it on time. But in the bigger picture, in the bigger world, and in these massive, massive companies, they must have people there who are going to make all these predictions, who are going to say, well, this could actually work in our favor if we try this and try this and try this. Again, that's free to be skeptical about because it's not necessarily proven, but I'm pretty sure that it is happening. Someone else says, I think we can actually take a step back. All we have to do is let one of our favorite franchises die. And you know what? I'm okay with letting Battlefront die for the greater good. So a lot of people actually think we can take a step back and go back into a time where we think things were, better. It's completely and utterly impossible. Never before has our species stopped progressing. This progression is unfortunate in some cases because most of us, when we get to a certain age, we actually start rejecting what is new, rejecting change. And I think this happens in places like this. If you're 20 plus, when we were growing up, games was kind of still getting into the market. They were still kind of getting published. 80s, 90s was around the era that it started becoming very, very popular. The only thing we could really compare it to was a world without games, because that's all we knew. A world without games and a world with games. Now, of course, we can compare it to the good old days where you pay for everything and now you need to pay for 80% of it and unlock the other 20% with even more money. It's just another sign that you're getting old when you do not accept this change. You can can say that the change is bad, you can say all of this, but again, you're just like every other old folk who said, back in my day, this never used to happen, and now it does happen. It's ridiculous. It's the exact same complaint, and yes, to some degree, they are right. You know, it would have been better for them back in their day. That's what they call it, their day. But for our current day and age, this is how it works. You've got 5-year-old Billy over there. He's going to grow up with games that only have microtransactions on it. Obviously, us older folks are going to say, hey, you should play these older games. They were much better. And then, of course, little Billy's going to go, no, I want to play these games. They're new, they're fresh. Plus, we get another generation of gamers that are used to microtransactions, and then maybe in the future, there'll be something worse than microtransactions, like you have to pay twice as much. Little Billy's going to be over there saying, well, back in my day, we only had to pay, you know, for 3 DLCs before we got the entire game. Why do we have to pay for 10 DLCs now? But you know, that's just life. Sometime in the future, we're going to be wishing that we were back in 2010 or something, because it was the perfect year. So I got 2 more comments that are really, really interesting, so hopefully you guys enjoy these too. Also, about what you said about this being the new standard, it's not really true for a lot of companies. Games like Noir, Automata, Final Fantasy XV, Dark Souls, etc. demonstrate that microtransactions, while they help to make some extra money, unless the game is free to play, are not necessary to be successful. I don't think that there is a direct link between microtransactions and actually being successful. I think that is a purely money-based thing. I think the success of your company comes from, again, what I support for EA, which is the manipulation of people to actually pay for your microtransactions. And this could be anything from being a really good game that people want to pay for microtransactions, or it could coming from tricking people into paying for microtransactions that they don't really want. I really, really hope it's not the new standard, and the only people that can really make that decision are not the consumers, are the developers themselves, and you guys are the next generation of developers, so hopefully whilst you're growing up, you find ways to make money out of a product that doesn't involve destroying somebody's gameplay, but that's something that may or may not happen, and we really don't know what's going to happen there. Again, I think the new industry standard is the manipulation to purchase certain things. Of course, even purchasing a game on its face is fine. I do think that certain examples will help your case and stuff like that. A lot of games do this. A lot of indie games especially don't really have microtransactions sort of embedded into them. It seems to be the AAA titles that are actually getting those purchases that are necessary towards their game. You can give me a million examples of games that do not use microtransactions that are successful, and I'm just going to say that 10 years ago, when there were basically next to no microtransactions within games, and now there are nothing but microtransactions within games, you know, you're trying to convince me that this is not changing into this microtransaction age. It's a horrible thing to think that that might be the next 10 years. The next 10 years are going to be full of microtransactions, but it's something that you need to accept. And if they're changing, you probably need to adapt to that too. And finally, this is my favorite comment. I think he's just making an excuse for himself. So if he ever makes a game and adds microtransactions, he will say it's the new standard and he didn't think it would succeed without them. Trust me, this is not an excuse. I was going to release a video for my game today, and my game has no form of microtransactions in it, so this doesn't really make too much sense if I was releasing it after the fact that I released the previous video. The overall goal of my career is going to be to make money off this art form that I love producing. The game could be successful without it, but without microtransactions on a game that's free to play, for example the one that's going to be released tomorrow, I'm not going to make any money. In fact, right now I have no form of making money within that game. So I was thinking for 2 weeks, this is why it's taken so long, because I'm thinking, well, I've made the game, it's ready to play. I was doing a little bit of polishes up for the last 2 weeks, but basically the gameplay was there and it was ready to go. So I have to try and make money elsewhere. I've spent 2 weeks on this and I have not come up with a single solution. I can't sell the game because, in my opinion, it's not to a level that I think it should be paid for. So the only thing I've come up with was a button that says donate on it, because I don't know how else to make money. I've put more money into this game than any other game I've ever made, and it's ridiculously simple. Anyway, I'll talk about that tomorrow. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully I cleared a lot of things up, and hopefully you guys understand a little bit better about what the intentions of that video were. And it was not to support EA, and it was not to support microtransactions. It was to support the way that EA is using microtransactions to get people to pay for it and try and make a profit back from the game that cost a lot of money to make. Anyway, clearly I'm really tired, so I'm going to go to bed, and hopefully you guys have an amazing and productive day. I'll see you tomorrow.